the number 13 ever edition of Inside the Woods, and the final part of our 4-part series featuring different Fairfield Woods Middle School staff from all the main departments. Today, me and Chase had the opportunity to speak to all 5 of the main FWMS administrators. To begin, here is our beloved Dean, Mr. Mark Robinson, to share a little bit more about his discipline tactics and much, much more about his job with us. Welcome to Inside the Woods.
Thanks for having me, Arav.
Anytime, Mr. Robinson. Now to start, can you explain the difference between your job and the job of Mrs. Banick, Mr. Seltzer, and Mr. D'Angelo?
Sure. So Mrs. Banick is our head principal. She is probably like the overseer of the entire building. We all kind of work under her direction. Mr. Seltzer is our assistant principal. He focuses on special education, working with those teachers, working with special ed students, making sure their services are taken care of. Does a fantastic job with that. And then Mr. D'Angelo is our part-time assistant principal, who also helps with the review of some of the other teachers that Mr. Seltzer can't get to.
Yes, 100%. Now, can you elaborate on your specific role within Fairfield Woods?
You got all day? No, so I'm responsible for the climate and culture here at the school. Any kind of disciplinary issues. I do restorative circles with students that are having issues with people. I create some of the different fun events that we do, run the lunches, run the buses, the field trips, basically everything that the principals don't do. And I'm kind of like the liaison between the students and the teachers.
100%. And I know now I'm actually interviewing you on the 22nd of April, which is the first day back before spring break. So we're essentially on the downward slope of the rest of the year. So a lot of disciplinary issues may pop up now in the second quarter. How do you think we can combat that?
We just got to be consistent with what we do. Teachers need to continue to follow the expectations. Students need to keep meeting those expectations. We just got to do some different things with starting to eat outside at lunchtime, give some people some breaks. We possibly could have recess here shortly that we're working on for like 10 minutes at each lunch wave. And just staying positive and just looking at that finish line, juice.
Definitely. Now, moving on to this, but still referring to your words in the original interview that we had with you, you mentioned a lot about cultural awareness, equality, etc. Can you elaborate on Wood's path so far throughout the beginning of the year on maintaining a cultural and diverse school?
I wish it was a little bit better, and we're constantly working towards that. Obviously, we have become a no place for hate school.
Transitioning from that, let's have you tell us a little bit about your personal job and personal experiences as a dean. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a dean?
I actually went for my 6th year, which was in educational leadership. I thought I wanted to be a principal. I decided not to, but I definitely wanted a role where I could work with both teachers and students, and this was like a perfect fit.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. Now, next up is Trace's interview with the FWMS principal, Mrs. Colleen Banick, to speak to us about her job.
You have a very important role as a principal. Really explain that role in depth and what exactly the priorities you have here at Woods and the things you accomplish.
Sure. I think one of the most complicated things about being a principal is that I have about 800 different jobs. My primary job always is to make sure that students and staff are safe, and I'm constantly doing things to help us improve. I have a huge responsibility to ensure that everyone at school is moving forward in their learning, monitoring their student progress, lots of different things. I'm never bored.
Explain really the main difference between your job and Mr. Robinson and Mr. D'Angelo's, etc. How your job is different from the other administrators here at Woods.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Especially from a student perspective, I can imagine why that might be a little bit confusing. Right. I mean, I'm the head person in the building. So if something goes wrong, it's on me to help to fix it, at whatever level that thing went wrong. Mr. Robinson is really primarily focused on student management and discipline in the building. Mr. D'Angelo and Mr. Seltzer, as the assistant principals, do a lot of what I do. I think the main difference between the administrator's jobs and Mr. Robinson's job is that Mr. Robinson's job is really completely student-focused and family-focused, whereas the administrators are really split between service to kids and service to staff. some of me not being the only face at Woods, the only big like adult with a big job here that talks to you guys, is that I really believe in division of that kind of leadership. So then, yes, I think from a student perspective, it's going to look like I'm more behind the scenes, kind of, pushing levers and buttons to make things happen for you guys. Yeah.
What exactly do you do? Break down a day-to-day life of Mrs. Banick here at Woods.
I think my day, it's an interesting job because when you are a classroom teacher, right, you come in, you go to your classroom, you get to teach your classes, and you're generally in one space all day. As a principal, and you come into a job like this, there's equal parts administrative stuff, meaning I need to answer emails for parents, I need to set up meetings, I need to run meetings. On a good day, I'm able to spend some time in the hallways, hanging out with you guys. Getting into classrooms, doing observations, giving teachers feedback on how their teaching is going in that particular lesson is another big part of my job.
So when I interviewed you last year, a lot of it was based on the schedule. We made a new schedule this year. Overall, would you say the schedule has been more successful? How has it gone, and do you see this being the schedule that is here for the future?
In comparison to last year, I think it's night and day. I think the schedule is much more palatable for everyone. For students to know that there's a cadence and a rhythm to the week now that did not exist when we were doing a 7-day rotation. Also, the addition of flex allows us to have this time for you guys. And so we came into it wanting to give students time to get some independent work done, specifically time to get help if they need it, in whatever form that needs to take depending on a student's need. So from the initial plan to now, I think it looks the same. I think the difference is that we've all lived it for almost a year now. Yeah. I would say moving forward, I think that the bones of the schedule are going to remain intact. Will we always think and want to tweak to make things better? Certainly. But a wholesale change is not something we're looking at.
Now, for anyone interested in safety, law enforcement, or anything of that sort, here is my interview with the school resource officer here at Woods, Officer John Klabowski. Mr. Klabowski, welcome to Inside the Woods. We're so happy to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, definitely. Now, can you start by describing your daily day of work here at Woods? And I know you work at a couple other schools throughout the district.
Yeah, so my typical day is not usually that typical because my office is here at Fairfield Woods Middle, and I start my day here. I see me outside giving everybody high fives and good morning as they come in. That's pretty much as typical as it gets. From there, I'm either going to one of my other schools, either for arrival, or I'm teaching shape classes to the 5th grade. I just taught some shape classes to 6th grade. But one of the good things I like about the job is that every day is a little bit different. So I'll go for different calls or to help out or teach some classes.
Yes, 100%. Now, besides teaching classes here at Woods and arrival and dismissal, is there any other roles at Woods that you can detail to us?
Sure. So my title is School Resource Officer. And that middle word resource is, you kind of pride ourselves on it. Sometimes the staff will come to me with questions and use me as a resource. This happened to me, law questions. This happened to me in my town. Can you help me out with that? Something that's happening in the school, the principal, vice principal, they'll come up to me and say, okay, here's what we have. As far as the legal aspect goes, what can you tell us about that? And I can decide right there whether or not I need to be involved or just give some advice.
Wow, that is so very cool. Now, can you explain to us how your role here at Woods may interact with the role of the other 4 administrators?
Sure. So like I was saying, sometimes they'll come to me and just ask me questions. If it's disciplinary action, they'll ask if it arises to a police level. But I'm more than happy to sit in on a counseling session with a student who's getting some consequences, just to talk about, if you were over 18, here's some consequences that could have happened. When it comes to safety of the school in general, I just keep reiterating, we want to keep the doors closed and locked. If there's any events that are happening outside, they keep me apprised so I could go out there, just keep an eye on everybody. Like the solar eclipse was a recent one. I just hung out in the back, make sure, I was present to make sure everybody was safe.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Now, let's make a slight transition to talk a little bit about your life. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a police officer?
Sure, yeah. So I always wanted to get into some form of law enforcement when I was younger. I ended up, life takes turns, and I ended up taking on many different jobs. I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to work at Fairfield University in the security sense, and Fairfield Police was hiring. I was 39 at the time, and my friend said, hey, we should try out for it. And I thought 39 is too old. I'm not going to get there. But there's many tests that go into becoming a police officer, and I obviously got through all of them because the first day of the police academy, I was standing there with all these young guys, and I was thinking to myself, how did I get here? So I was lucky enough to get back to what I originally wanted to do with my life, and it's been a fun ride ever since.
That's great, definitely, and thank you so much for joining us on Inside the Woods today, Officer.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Had a great time.
Thank you.
Now let's head into a special double interview with the two FWMS vice principals alongside Chase Coburn, Mr. Kenneth Seltzer, as well as Mr. Steve D'Angelo, to tell us a lot about their job and their different roles.
How did you really get your career started as an assistant principal before you got here to Woods?
Sure, yeah. Like Mr. D'Angelo, I started off as a Spanish teacher in a 5 through 8 school.
Muy interesante.
And muy interesante. I studied to become a reading teacher, and I moved from being a Spanish teacher to a reading teacher, and I got a job here in Fairfield. And I started at Ward High School as a reading teacher and an ELL teacher. And they asked me to be a sub for a principal at Osborne Hill who was out sick, and then I got this position here in Woods about 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Now you work as an assistant principal at Ludlow and here at Woods. What kind of challenges do you have working in both schools, but how are you able to manage everything and be successful in both schools?
I've been an assistant principal this is my 6th year, and I've never met another administrator that's split between buildings. Sometimes it's a lot. Being in 2 schools means I'm getting, I have to know twice as many people, twice as many teachers, twice as many students, twice as many parents,
Right.
all those kind of things. And I enjoy knowing a lot of people. I find it as a challenge, and that I love kids, which is why I got into the teaching business. It works.
For you specifically, what is your main job as an assistant principal?
You all know what your schedules are like, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm the one who pretty much works on it all summer long, making sure you guys all have the right schedules and they're all in place for when school starts. I work with a lot of the teachers on how to make their teaching better, really just help the kids out as much as possible. I work with a lot of families, especially those that don't speak English, because I do speak Spanish, so I work with a lot of those parents. As assistant principals, a lot of it is we try to help Mrs. Banick do the best job she can so that we can make this a great place for you guys.
I see myself as an extension of Mr. Seltzer. There's a lot of kids in this building. There's a lot of teachers. So that means there's a lot of work. So I kind of come in at the second half of the week and kind of fill some holes. There's testing. You guys know about NWA testing and SBA testing. So there's all those little pieces that we have to worry about to make a school run. We're on safety committees. We work very closely with our SRO, right, Mr. Jobluski. So there's a lot of little pieces that go into the day to making a building run smoothly. And like Mr. Seltzer said, our main job is to kind of take some pressure off Ms. Banick. We try to be there to support you kids. We go to basketball games, we plays, we do all those things. We're at game night, so we just try to make school the best, safest, best place for kids that it can be in.
What would you say is the hardest part of your job?
Yeah, I think like Mr. D'Angelo talked about being visible to the kids. I think sometimes that's the hardest thing for me is making sure that I have enough time to do that, to go into classrooms, visit the classrooms, see the kids, see what they're doing, knowing all the kids' names. Because we have over 750 kids here at school, and I love to know everybody's names, and sometimes that's hard.
So for me, it's kind of similar to Mr. Seltzer. Because I'm in 2 buildings, I have to know 1,500 kids, and I know it's important for kids that I know their name. I think it matters to kids. I hope it matters to kids because it matters to me. That's what learning and teaching is all about, is the connections. So forming that over 2 schools is probably the most challenging thing to me. Yeah.
Contrary to that, what would you say is the most enjoyable part of your job?
Just seeing the kids grow is one of the best things for me, and and I've got to know a lot of the kids over the years, and for me that's my most enjoyable part of the job.
Kids for me too, Chase, 100%. Seeing a kid come in, like you mentioned, from elementary school, coming in as a ending 5th grader, and then by the time they leave us in 8th grade and they're going to the high school, they're practically like adults. Watching that 3 years of growth is tremendous.
On that note, thank you so much to Mr. Robinson, Officer Klobowski, Mrs. Banick, Mr. Seltzer, and Mr. D'Angelo for joining us today. And thank you for watching to the end of today's episode of Inside the Woods. With this, you guys know the drill. Alongside my great behind-the-scenes crew, particularly head cameraman Parshul Shah, our supervisor Mr. Silva, and co-host Chase Coburn, signing off from here at Fairfield Woods Middle School. I am your host, R. Peace out, dudes.